with Mo. And now, here's your host, Mo Vela.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lorena Chambers, and I am guest hosting this week for my good friend Mo Vela for his wonderful show, In the Know with Mo. I want to thank you, gentle listeners, for joining us today. We have two amazing guests to talk to us about the role of history in our everyday lives. We are actually across the country. I am broadcasting live not far from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And our first guest is coming to us from Washington, D.C. She's truly amazing. Margaret Salazar Porzio, who has a PhD from the University of Southern California, is curator of Latinx history and culture in the Division of Cultural and Community Life at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. Currently, she is project director of the bilingual exhibition and book Play Ball in the Barrios and the Big Leagues, which began its national tour, ironically, coincidentally, here in Michigan in January 2021. It is an artifact-rich version that opened at the National Museum of American History in Washington, D.C. in just actually 2 months ago, in July 2021. Margie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Lorena. It's so great to see you.
It is wonderful to have you and to see you and to share what you do at the Smithsonian. I want to hear more about this really amazing new exhibit at the Smithsonian. Like, what is it about? Who is your audience? How did the ideas come about? And knowing that we just have limited times for a whole set of questions, but tell us about the exhibit and is it open during the pandemic?
Yes, well, I'm excited to tell you all about this exhibit. It really tells the story of how Latinas and Latinos have used baseball to chase their dreams, to challenge prejudice, and to build communities in the barrios and in the big leagues. And the exhibition was really made possible through a number of close collaborations with communities across 15 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. And we worked with these communities to help bring visibility to these Latina, Latino histories through baseball. And really, I like to say that what sets Playboy apart is that we simultaneously focus on Latinos' outsized impact on Major League Baseball, the impact of the game on Latino communities throughout the country, and how women have played significant roles, which you don't really see that a lot in most exhibits and stories told about baseball. So I'm excited to bring, the heart of Latino communities to the public through these beautiful stories and objects related to baseball. We are open, and it's a pretty busy time. School just started, so I think we're going to start tapering off, but we're open every day except for Wednesdays and Thursdays. And you can find out more if you go to americanhistory.si.edu/playball. And you can find out all kinds of stuff about the exhibit, and you can visit us in DC. And we're also traveling to 15 different sites, as you mentioned, through 2025. So hopefully we're coming to your hometown.
This is so wonderful because you're talking about community stories, Margie, and the importance of regular everyday people, but then exalting them to, frankly, a national level, like being at the Smithsonian, which is a truly special place. So tell us a little bit about the years, because I've worked at the Smithsonian, I've worked with you, I've worked with others. How many years of preparation did this particular exhibit take? And is this a normal average amount of time for this kind of exhibit?
Oh man, it took a lot of years. It took about, it took 5 years, six because last year was kind of a lost year. We had finished most everything and we're ready to open last October 2020. Initially, we were planning on opening in April 2020, and that got bumped because of a government shutdown. But then we moved it to October, and then we got bumped again because of the pandemic. And so it's exciting to be open now, but it was a long time in the making just to get to those many delays. Yeah, it was about 5 years of working with communities and kind of crisscrossing the nation to find these objects of significance related to community stories that really help to round out the understanding of how baseball plays such an important part in many Latino lives. I would say that it's actually not common to spend this much time on an exhibit that is not considered a permanent exhibit. The exhibit will only be up for about a year, maybe a little longer, in Washington, D.C., and it's traveling through 2025, throughout the nation. So it is not permanent. A lot of our exhibits are based off of objects that we already have in-house. And those, they don't take as long to produce and to put together. But in this case, we didn't really have the collection. So it was also a collections building project, which ended up taking a lot longer.
I can imagine. I
Yeah.
mean, how many, just to give us a sense, Margie, how many objects do you have? Did you start off in the collection at the National Museum of American History, but then how many additional objects did you collect and how many are actually on exhibit? Because those are three different numbers.
Right. Well, if you count all of the objects in the National Museum of American History collections, including numismatics, which is like, every little coin and piece of money, it's about 3 million objects in the
Wow.
National Museum collection. And in terms of baseball, there's a sizable amount of baseball material, not always related to Latinos in baseball. But we had Roberto Clemente's Pittsburgh Pirates batting helmet and jersey already, and an autographed ball from the gold-winning 2004 U.S. Olympics women's softball team in Athens. We had also Mariano Rivera's glove, a number of other things. But what was mostly, missing was the community stories. And so we added about 140 plus objects to the museum to really reflect and round out this history. And in the exhibit, we have about 65 on display, and then a number of what we call props, which are objects that maybe we purchased because they're available and there's not just like one of a kind. And so we're able to kind of display it, but we might not collect it because it's widely available. So we have about 65 objects on display, and a lot of them tell some really, really cool stories.
So think about it, 65 objects on display, you collected 140 stories, you already have 3 million items just at American history because the Smithsonian, gentle listeners, is consisting of 19 museums and a zoo. So this is just
Yeah.
one museum. And so I'd like to get into like a behind the scenes, like what does it take to make these choices? You clearly were part of a big team. Couldn't do it alone. Tell us how many people were on your team, and how do you go through these choices to create what ends up being an incredible display at the end for hopefully millions of people who walk through the museum?
Well, that's an excellent question, mostly because it allows me to tell you about my amazing team. We've worked with so many fantastic people at the museum, at the Smithsonian, and then external to the Smithsonian. We've made a number of amazing partnerships and relationships. Our team really consisted of a few curators and a number of others who were educators, helping with interpretation. We had designers on board that we worked with. We also have fabricators and people who make all of the mounts and install everything into the space. So the team is really large. And I wish I could pull up like this great slide I have of like there's like 4 columns of like 40 people each, and it just has all of these people that we've worked with, from finance to the Office of General Counsel, that you wouldn't really expect to be on the team, but who worked pretty closely with us. And that team it grew over the years. In terms of curators, it was mostly me, and also I had a wonderful person working with me, Robin Morey, who has moved on to bigger and better things at the Smithsonian. But she worked with me for 3 years, and we did a lot of work together in terms of thinking through what makes the best story. But obviously, I had others who worked with me and helped in the collecting. There was Magdalena Mieri and Steve Velasquez. They went to a number of the collecting events and made these relationships with people and helped us to really kind of broaden our scope and our reach.
Well, we're going to go to break soon, but when we come back, I really would love to hear a little bit more. You just mentioned about broadening the scope and reach and trying to get more people into the museums. I'd like to hear more about how you feel everyday history affects us, right? Everyday history, and why should people learn about history? And then we'll also touch upon the fact that there's a narrative about Latinx, Latino, and Latina stories, and talk about folks who say, well, I'm not Latino, so maybe I shouldn't go. So that's the question we're going to pose when we get back, to hear the reasons why everyone, frankly, should run to the Smithsonian, get through American history, and see your wonderful and beautiful exhibit. So we'll catch you back on the other side of the break.
I want to get back to
Sounds
seeing
good.
my grandbabies every Sunday and smothering them with big hugs and kisses.
I want to get back to football games with my boys.
I want to get back to feeling and touching, connecting with the people around me.
I want to get back to family dinners and my grandma's mac and cheese.
I want to get back to real grocery shopping, taking my time, walking down every aisle, smelling the tomatoes and melons, having a free sample or two, or three.
COVID-19 has changed how we live and how we feel. But now, there are vaccines. And they are the first step that let us get back to feeling optimistic about the days ahead of us. It's okay to have questions.
Is it safe?
Should I get it?
Should I wait?
Now, get the facts. Learn more at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hey sis, missed you this morning. Kim told me you weren't feeling well, so I'm just doing a self-care check.
Ah, thank you, friend.
How you doing?
Girl, listen, my energy was so low because I didn't eat breakfast when I got up, so I had to miss virtual yoga with y'all.
Trust me, I understand.
But I'm doing much better now that I've eaten, so I'm back on track.
Great. In that case, let's get some steps in tonight. I'll come over and we can walk around the lake.
Sounds good. Appreciate you being in my business, too. Now, let me get in yours. Did you check your blood pressure today?
I did that and my squats, okay?
Okay.
High blood pressure is not going to be my friend if I can help it. See you at 6?
Let's get it. See you then.
Now more than ever, it's important that we protect our hearts and the hearts of those we love. Check in on one another and be a part of a healthy blood pressure movement. Rally your squad to take the online pledge at releasethepressure.org. Brought to you by the Release the Pressure Coalition and the Ad Council.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1910. That was the day the Protocol of Peace brought an end to the cloakmakers' strike in New York City. The garment industry had been rocked by the uprising of 20,000 months earlier. Young women had struck hundreds of small shops over pay, recognition, and working conditions. They won ILGWU recognition in all but a handful of shops. 60,000 cloakmakers in the city were inspired to walk out of the sweatshops that July. The mostly male strike force demanded shorter hours and increased pay, the closed shop, and more. Union membership soared, and most of the small shops caved. The larger manufacturers would not, however, and by the end of the summer, the Protocol of Peace was negotiated. Future Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis figured prominently in